I will walk over to their locker room right now and hand them our playbook. I will give them our entire playbook right now because it doesn't matter. Because if we execute what we know we can do, they're not going to be able to stop us anyway. I look at training really in the same way now, that it doesn't matter what I do. If I execute and I pursue and I bring the kind of learning mindset with me, I can do any program and get results.
Welcome to the Strength Connection podcast, a show to share stories, insights, and experiences in strength, physically, mentally, and spiritually. I'm Michael Krukowski, host of the Strength Connection, and I'm so grateful that you can join me today. So in these episodes, I connect with some of the most inspiring and successful individuals to chop it up and learn from true life experiences that have helped them become who they are, the strongest versions of themselves. One of the greatest ways I've always learned the most important lessons is through stories. We all have them, and they make us who we are. So let's dive in. Here we go. And we are back. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. Mr. Jones, thank you for coming back. Appreciate it.
Mike, thanks so much. Kind of blew my mind as we were getting ready for the podcast and talking about it. It's been 99 or 100 podcasts down the road since I was on last. I was like, holy mackerel, you've been busy.
All right. It does. It is. It's such a cliche of time moves fast, but we chat, regularly from our, coaching relationship that we have. So it didn't feel like that. But as I was researching and going in, because I knew you were coming back on, I was like, okay, another 100 down. So I appreciate it. And thanks. And it's always a blast to talk to you. So thank you.
Absolutely. Glad to have the opportunity and look forward to the conversation today.
Yeah. So last time we chatted, was just when the book Iron Cardio came out.
Right.
I believe. Yeah. So a year down the line, I wanted to really have you back to go over the evolution of kind of the last year. It's always interesting because these concepts that we have when they're first principles, right? Things don't change so much at the macro level, but things do always adjust and evolve on the micro level with that. So I've learned so much from this modality that you put out from Iron Cardio and the work that we did, not just from reading the book numerous times, but living it over and over again from my experience here. So that concept of structure versus intuition, I think is always powerful. So, but my first question really, as I was actually preparing notes for this, because I wanted to make sure I had some specifics because I wanted to dive in. Since the book came out and this modality in Iron Cardio got even more popular, is there one question that people reach out to you and ask more than others? Is there like one that's like always the most popular question that people always come to you with?
I think it's two. One would be, how do I get started? Because it's such a different training method than most people typically do. And then number two is, how do I not screw it up? How do I know I'm not missing something? How do I, and I'm like, what? I don't know. Like, you go talk to me when you're 50 Iron Cardio sessions down the road. Your questions are going to be a lot different. But to the question of how to get started, I think the easiest answer, and this, it's in the book, is grab a bell. And if you want to start with a 10 RM bell, and I'll throw myself up as admitting that I don't test myself often.
Sure.
AKA ever. So when I say I'm using a 5 or 6 RM bell, I'm guessing. Like I actually haven't tested my 5 or 6 RM. I haven't tested my 10 RM.
It's like a chef. Like, I don't think a chef in the kitchen ever actually brings out the measuring cup anymore. It's like, yeah, it's a cup of it's about that.
Yeah, a pinch. It's a pinch. So, if you're using a 5 or 6 RM bell, or your 8, 10 RM, whatever it is, set a clock for 20 minutes, do a set on the right or left. It's a benevolent dictatorship. And then repeat on the other side and see how many sets you get in 20 minutes. And that's going to help you start laying a little bit of a baseline. And I think the classic Iron Cardio, strength aerobics, clean press squat, traveling twos, and then if you decide to add a snatch, clean press squat snatch, and traveling twos with that sequence. Those 4 routines out of the Iron Cardio playbook, I think those give you the best kind of baseline. For where you are. And I love bouncing between right now. If I'm using a 32 kilo, I'm usually doing either a rep ladder, a traveling twos plus snatch, or just clean press, squat, snatch.
Mhm.
And so but at the 36, I'm doing the classic clean press, squat, and traveling twos with the
Okay.
clean press and squat. Those are the kind of the main variations. And I throw
Mhm.
in a rep ladder every now and then. And I do, starting to do more double bell sessions.
Mm.
And, that's something that earlier in the year,
Yep.
and my training has kind of had an imposed waviness to it,
Sure.
because I had a little weird flare up of a couple things in the middle of the year, and went from really edging towards doing more sessions with double 36 and the 40, and 36 starting to feel pretty light.
Mhm.
And had to kind of reboot my training just a little bit because I had some big inflammatory flare up from a reaction to some CT contrast, and big eczema reaction, and then some on some steroids to help with that.
Yeah.
Prednisone is a miracle drug,
It's just
but you don't want to be on it for long periods of time.
you don't. It works miracles, but it's yeah, it's hopefully it's very short lived in the body.
Yeah, I mean, I am dealing with this eczema flare up and this reaction to the CT contrast, and I'm
Mhm.
setting PRs. Like I'm doing stuff with the double 36s and 40s that I've never done, and
Mhm.
I'm like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
And then my body after the fact went
Right.
and had a little dip in the training. So it's been interesting to go through all that, and then I think the just kind of almost like discomfort with that people have with not having a set plan.
That's what
Do
I was going
X
to
on
ask.
Monday. Yeah.
Yeah, is that question of like, how do I get started? Is it more just that all of a sudden, oh my God, there's this freedom around here, and I'm so used to like, here's the box, and I need to stay within the box, and this challenges that kind of that fixed mindset a little bit of what was normal for so long.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the guardrails come off, and if you in the past have been kind of a very structured trainee, when somebody says, I know you had the guardrails here, but now we're going to blow them out about 8 lanes wide and give you all of this room to ping around within,
Mhm.
like it can be really challenging for folks because they don't know where to go. And my friend and colleague John Spezzano is one of those guys who he embraced Plan Strong. He's got his Excel spreadsheets and he can generate all the plans and different things like that. And so of course he had to go ahead and merge the two, and he put out an article here not too
Mhm.
long ago on how he integrated some Plan Strong style programming into a military press routine, and got some really great results out of it. He
Mhm.
did really well with using some rep ladders. Most of his training was at the 28 kilo, but I think it got him back to pressing the 40 kilo. And
Mhm.
John's a spring chicken of about 55,
Yeah.
54, 55 years old. So real good strength gains, and yeah, then he actually ran rite of passage and did not get as good a results.
Yeah.
So I think there's some stuff to be said for that. And going through programming demystified,
Mhm.
and doing the things that within StrongFirst we do with programming, like I just continue to settle back into my own. I'm blending in a lot of kettlebell
Yep.
acts right now, and
Mhm.
but yeah, I'm sorry, that was a little bit of a ramble on what I've been doing.
No,
But
I think it's a fascinating concept. I got a chance to talk with Jeff Newport recently, and who just came from Program Demystified and had nothing but raving reviews about the information that's coming out there. But it's that I know there's a point in the book that I love where you talked about structure versus intuition, and saying if you deem yourself a structured person, you identify with that, but you're not getting the results you're looking for, then maybe you need an intuitive approach. But vice versa on that, like if you feel you need to be this intuitive person, but you're not getting the results, maybe you need more structure. So I think it's a beautiful way of saying, okay, what are you aiming for? Like, what is the ultimate goal that you're looking for? Because there's no wrong answer to it. That's what I love about iron cardio, was like, there's no wrong answer. You can play around with different things, but the one thing you should probably measure is, am I getting the results I'm looking for?
right. And for me, I'm a little bit of an anomaly when it comes from a training standpoint. I don't have any goals. Like I enjoy training. I think I could be doing something very different in my life, and I would still be making time 3 to 5 days a week to get some training in. And I'm not aiming for a military press goal. I'm
Sure.
not prepping for a powerlifting meet or, anything like that. I enjoy training. So I
Yeah.
train. And I think
Has that always been you? Because you've had very specific things you've aimed for in the past with your work in powerlifting and stuff before. Do you think this is how you approach training now because of the experience that you've had, or has this always kind of been more of your mindset?
Oh, well, I kind of have to go back to the joke that I've made a lot, is that nobody sends me programs to experiment with because they know I'm not going to follow them. Even my last squat cycle, when I was prepping for an AAU nationals meet, and this is back in 2007, I think, and I did squat 518, at the meet as a raw 198 lifter, and Ryabinyakov squat cycle, I think was the name of it.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's certain recommendations that are in there. So I kind of, did my own thing with it. And, the results were pretty good. So yes, I think that this is 20 plus years down the road, and 25 coming on 30 years of experience of being a trainer, and having been every kind of trainer. Like I've been the functional training guy, the body weight training guy, the cardio king, whatever, just focusing on that. And, I've kind of done all the different versions
Right.
of what you could do in this. And, and then, 20 plus years ago, really settling into kettlebells being a main modality. And I think that, so it's kind of a learned outcome of all my different experiences.
Yeah. No, I think, personally for me, I always found like if something's so structured, I start to just a natural overthinker that I am, of like thinking the expectation. Am I where I'm supposed to be at this moment right now? Because this is what the plan says. This is what the program says. So am I at this right spot? I'm supposed to do 80% on this day for this. Does it feel right? And so that's just my own head. But the more people I've talked to, I think a lot of people get into that. And structure kind of gives a little bit of that almost freedom from having to be more focused, I think, into it a little bit. So that's why this shift over into like that intuitive cycle, I've seen it work with people, and it is like that nervous feeling a little bit off the bat. So, but to begin with, as you stated, like 20 minutes, grab a bell, like, 10 rep max, give it a shot and see kind of what's rolling from there. And then just kind of move, and then just kind of see what's like the next steps that go on from there.
Yeah. And do you want to focus on, press strength? Do you want to, do you need more? Are you after a little more leg development? And so maybe you would choose more double bell versions and do a squat ladder versus a press ladder. Just where do you need to shift the emphasis to get the adaptations that you're looking for? And just real quick on the structured end of things. And I was reminded of this both looking back through my training log. I used to keep a blog on Blogspot. So
I remember that.
appliedstrength.blogspot.com. Oh yeah. Boy, I went back and kind of dove in there because I was looking for something, because I had made a comment years ago that if you locked me in a room with a 16 kilo bell, I would still come out fit and strong. Right. It's not the amount of weight I have. It is how can I manipulate internal and external leverages, loading, volume, density outside of the intensity, because that's fixed, right? You got one bell. And so I feel like you could lock me in a room with either no weight or 16 kilo bell, and I'm going to come out fit and strong. And so somebody this gets reposted or people talk about it from time to time. And so there was a thread on the forum where somebody was, and oh my gosh, like I had to get back on there and say, guys and gals, like you're taking this a little too seriously.
Yeah.
This is just a thought experiment.
Blasphemy. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Like people started getting really kind of upset about it. And I'm like, whoa, just a thought experiment.
Yeah.
Nobody's taking your kettlebells away from you, right? You still have all your bells. Yeah. But if you got locked in a room with one bell, could you figure it out?
Yeah.
And not the ideal bell, right? Because right now, if you said, okay, you need to move and you can take one bell with you, I would grab my 32 kilo bell. I feel like with that, I can do a wide enough variety of things to where I could accomplish my goals, for which,
Yeah.
not having goals is a pretty convenient out for saying that you can accomplish your goals, right? But I'd grab a 32 kilo bell. But I had gone back into my blog spot to find this time frame where I had been doing a lot of training sessions with like a 16 and 20 kilo bell.
Yep.
And yet went to an event in Hungary where I pressed the 48 kilo for 3 or 4 singles over the course of the weekend with my right arm. And so obviously I'd maintained a decent level of strength as things went along. But it also threw me back, and programming demystified threw me back into thinking about the Russian squat routine, which I did. And I did it as it was traditionally laid out as a 6-week, 3-day-a-week program. Well, I ran that twice in a row for my deadlift, which is not typically what you're supposed to, because you end up doing 6 sets of 6 at 80%, which the second time I ran it was like 405 for 6 sets of 6.
That's a lot of weight.
It was. Now I put like, I don't know, 50, 70, I forget how much weight I actually put on my deadlift, but it was a lot.
Sure.
And ended up pulling 3 times body weight at the end of that. But so I've followed very structured routines, and I've gone in the gym, and maybe it's a day where you don't feel like hitting 80% for 6 sets of 6.
Yeah.
Hopefully nobody feels like hitting 80% for 6 sets of 6, but if it's on the schedule, you do it. And so I think there's times for both. There's times where you want to find out what does it mean to really, just because the big data might be telling you that you're not fully recovered for today's session, but it's go time and you need to get this done. Figure it out, get it done. And so I think there's always a duality there between the structure and the intuition. And I say that simplicity is purchased at the price of complexity. So you have to have been through the complex in order to come through and simplify it.
Right.
I think you have to have been structured and intuitive in order to come out the other side being able to program yourself. And I know, some people will come back to the idea that they say that if as a lawyer, if you have yourself as your client, you have an idiot for a client.
Right. Yeah.
And some people will try to put that into a training context. And I'm like, well, wait a second. Like, I use an accountant. I'm not trying to do my own taxes, right?
Right.
But I feel like I should be able to program myself. I feel like the programs that I'm putting together for people, I should have done that and know, because I used to run into this when I ran classes out in Iron Core in San Diego, 04 to 06. I'd have 5 people signed up online. I'd sit down and design a class. 17 people show up.
Yeah.
The plan gets tossed out the window and you make something up. And there were times when I would kind of make something up and then I would do it later and I'd be like, oh God, those poor people.
Yeah.
That was rough. And so I made sure that I was either participating or had done it before I started doing it to people. And you see this all the time in different professional and certification books where you'll see a lunge routine. And when you do the math, it takes 2.5 to 3 hours and it's about 500 lunges.
Yeah.
Like, it's not survivable.
Yeah.
So I think that, the mix there of having been coached, having followed a program, coaching yourself and being intuitive in that kind of 4-stage mix, there's something really good that comes out the other side of that, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. No, I love that. There's a few threads I want to pull on that. The one that you said, like, to get to the intuition, like, you need to go through the structure first. So I've thought about this a lot when everybody says everything in moderation. And I'm like, I call bullshit on that. Like, I think you need to go into some times of extreme or very like detail oriented on something if you're doing it. Like, not everything moderation. Like, sometimes you need to push your limits to see where you can go in different ways. And we don't talk about that as much because a lot of the things you hear is from people who have been down that road already. Maybe you're at a different level, but when you talk about that with the 16 kilogram, I love that there was some interesting comments when Coach Dan John was on here once. We were chatting, and he threw out an interesting line of saying, talking about minimalism, and said if you put a decently strong person on a desert island with a 28 kilogram bell and left them there for a year, the amount of creativity that they would have to come up with over the year, they would change like strength and conditioning programs. And it's an interesting thought process. He wasn't saying it as gospel, like this is what you need to do, but there was some definite interesting things of coming out of that. But I think the reality, as you said, is like, yeah, you need to go in and like the way that you actually experience and find new things that really work best for you is to play around with it a little bit. If you're only doing something structured, then you're always following someone else's idea of what they think is best for you. And that's what I saw is like when you get into a little bit of that creativity and that intuitiveness, now you start putting your own thoughts into it. It starts to become your own idea, and your brain trusts you more than it trusts me. Like, so if you add that in, I think that's really powerful. But a point that you said on that with intuitiveness is you said, I was intuitive, but I wasn't formless. And I love that line that you said there. Can you elaborate on what you mean by that?
Well, I think I in the process of experimenting with it, I found out the 3 to 5 reps sort of metric that I use. 6 was too many.
Gotcha.
Like, it was that simple. Like I did routines where I experimented with that, and I found that 3 to 5 rep range to be really ideal. Now within that, in knowing that I want to create sessions that are 3 to 5 reps per set, how many different ways can I make that happen? I can ladder the press, I can ladder the squat, I can do traveling twos, I can do the moving target, I can add a snatch and end up at 4 reps. Like there's a lot of different ways that I can tweak that simple metric of 3 to 5 reps per set. And so that's kind of where I think the formless, not formless, but intuitive sort of, there are some guidelines and guardrails that you need to stick to. And, the StrongFirst stop signs are an excellent, collection of guardrails that if you put those up and you kind of coordinated your training and 3 to 5 reps per set is like a golden rule that transitions across a lot of different applications. So I just think that that's where you get the, and I do like to refer to it more as guardrails than as guidelines or principles, because now we're not really talking about principles, but we are talking about what are these guardrails, these guidelines that I can give you that you can ping around within and safely find your own path.
I like that. Yeah, it's having a court that you're playing on. I always thought, like, if you're playing basketball, like, well, you're going to create on the court however you need to go score a basket, but they're still out of bounds lines. If you don't have that, you're not playing basketball anymore. You're doing something else. So I love that distinction of intuition. Like, freedom without boundaries isn't freedom. That's chaos. Like, because you have no idea what the heck's going on from there. So when you're playing around with this, like with the rep ladders, I was always curious with, do you seem to go more towards one rep ladder versus another? Do you travel that at all, of like doing it like with a clean or a press or a squat? Do you usually hold to one?
I've done it more just with the press. I've done it with the squat some, and again, that's like a couple of times I've experimented with a little bit more double bell work and wanting to emphasize the legs a little bit and experimenting with the rep ladder in there. But you end up accumulating a lot of squats. Because if I've pushed the press weight ladder out to 60 sets, which is 120 presses, that's a good number of presses to do in a day. And that's usually happening sub 45 minutes. That's a lot of pressing. Well, if that's squats, if you did 120 squats with like double 32 bells, or, even if it was 60, 90 squats, like it's a lot of squats.
Yeah.
You think about it from the standpoint that a 5x5 routine is usually considered like a good volume metric if we were barbell back squatting.
Right.
And that's a pretty good volume day, 5x5, 25 reps. I can blow that out of the water, not to the same loads, but I can blow that out of the water from a volume standpoint just by throwing a little rep ladder in on the squats. So you kind of have to be careful with where you go with that.
Yeah. It seems like with the press too, like with the squats, like you can always do like more reps with the squat, it seems like, where it's hard personally for me to see like as my power really losing at all in the squat versus the press. It's like if you're doing a press ladder, you can see when you need to take a little bit more time and rest. It seems like the squat, you can almost sneakily always get more sets in there, because I mean, because if you're doing a single squat, you can normally just bang out, and you can kind of always bang out another one. You can always get another one, which is almost, it's like a hard, it's like a challenging thing. It's almost, we've talked about this before. It's almost, you wish you broke down a little bit more, in
So you could
time
stop. Please, something get tired. So I don't want to do this anymore.
Exactly, from there. So going back to with adding the snatch, I've said before, like just the difference between the classic clean press squat and then adding the snatch, it really is like night and day in the amount of work that you're doing from there. How did that, if you bring it back to the history, how did that come about when you started adding the snatch? Where did that idea come from?
Well, I started playing with the original strength aerobics article when Pavel and Alexei Senart put that out in 2014, I think. I started playing with it because it sounded, sounded good. Now, I went way heavier. I was pretty quickly using a 32 and a 36, and this is back pre-Timeless. Simple and Sinister and Timeless was a watershed moment for me. That was where a lot of things changed for me from a programming standpoint, because I was very much in the habit of by the clock. The clock's going to go ding. I know what to do. I'm going to rest for X long, and I'm going to do the next set. And I did most everything by the clock. And so Timeless was a watershed moment. So I would set up these sessions where I would do clean press squat, snatch, clean press squat with, like I said, a 32 or 36 kilo bell, sometimes throwing the snatch in and things like that. And found out real quick that clean press squat versus clean press squat snatch was not a linear one step up. It was an exponential jump in intensity. And I did one the other day where I was 32 kilo traveling twos plus snatch. Woo!
Yeah.
Like adding the snatch is bad enough, but having to do two of those bad boys every fourth iteration through every eighth set is going to be traveling twos plus seventh and eighth set is going to be traveling twos plus snatch. Yeah, it's exponential. And when you look at it, and the Richter scale was what I used in the book, because I had to look that up years ago. We tend to think, because our lives are so linear anyway, we tend to think, okay, 5 on the Richter scale is one magnitude lower than, or one step lower than a 6. No, it is a magnitude of, it's 100 times more powerful. Going from a 5 to a 6. So it's the numbers start to, because typically, and I'll throw myself under the bus first, come out, I'm not so good at math. So, it's a thing. So, for me, understanding that this is exponential, not linear, was something that I experienced and then was able to put words to, because it was one of those things where I'm like, God, all I did was add a rep per set, but man, that hit harder, and not like a little harder. Like I just got my butt handed to me harder. And so that sort of, I think understanding that and blowing that out from a programming standpoint is because we tend to think linear, and with kettlebell axe coming out and things like that, people think, well, we're going to go from 4 reps to 5 reps, 6 reps, or we're going to go from 4 to 6 reps. Well, maybe. Maybe the next step, once you've completed your 4 reps for X amount of minutes, is not just to jump to 6. Now, there can be a benefit to jumping to 6 because your time is going to very naturally come down quite a bit. You're going to have this programming variable that happens where you've increased the intensity or you've increased the volume, which changes your density, which changes the intensity from an effort standpoint, not from a percent of 1RM standpoint. So your time will naturally come down. So there's wisdom to having that big jump and reset versus going from 4 to 5 to 6. But even if you're trying to go from 4 to 5 to 6, Maybe your next step after hitting 4 for X amount of time is not to jump to 5. Maybe it's to go between, do 4, do 5, do 4, do 5.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Alternate the sets. Then once you can do that, then start swapping out more sets for sets of 5. Once you can do all the sets for 5, start layering in a set of 6. And so you can, there's just a lot of different ways to cook that to avoid the exponential sort of impact. Sometimes you want the exponential impact.
Right.
It's not something that you always want to avoid, but you want to know that you're getting into exponential versus linear when you start having a programming change.
Yeah. Well, it seems with something that has a cardiovascular benefit to it and a conditioning benefit, the exponential really feels different. Like that jump in more of like a grind and a strength, like a military press or a deadlift, like that leap of faith, that step loading of the Russian system, can see a little bit more, like it makes sense a little bit more. The conditioning piece, that's a great example of the linear versus exponential. I was thinking of million versus a billion, and we think like those are so close, like it's just 1 0. And I remember hearing like a million seconds is like 17 days and a billion seconds is 31 years or something.
Yeah.
Like
11 and a half days, and right at, it's like 31 and a half,
it's
32 years. A trillion seconds is just shy of 32,000 years.
And
so
exactly.
And when the US government starts talking money, oh, we're 7 trillion in debt. Okay. 1 trillion is 32,000 years in seconds. So now
on paper it's just one, on paper it's just one more zero. But in reality of it is powerful. And it's similar with this, because just like we're talking about with structured programs on paper, it might look good on paper, but when you actually put it into practice versus the theory, now you need to get into it. And especially when you get to levels of percentage where you're lifting some serious weight and you're getting that strength, that's a lot of 80% volume. When you have a 500-pound deadlift is way different than if you have a 250-pound deadlift, like just on the body and just the overall volume of it. But it is funny, the traveling twos and even just adding the snatch, it's one of the most sneakiest types of things to add more volume, because it does not feel that different the first round through. But then that accumulation of volume when you get to 15 minutes in, 20 minutes in, and getting all of a sudden, it is very different. I learned that the hard way, of thinking you could just keep the same time frame, that every 30 seconds or so coming in. And that's one of the comments I've had from people I've gone through with the program, of thinking right off the bat first, like, oh, like that's it, you just add another rep. It's like, yeah, that's it.
That's it.
Yeah, just ask me afterwards. But even just going from the classic of just the adding the snatch, like I think that's such a powerful jump as well.
Absolutely. And I when I started playing with that, it was just, I wanted that quick ballistic finish to almost undo the tension of the grinds, because you got one quick little ballistic at the beginning, you've got a grind in the press, you got a grind in the squat, and then I just wanted something to kind of undo that tension and do something powerful at the end. And the snatch made sense to me to throw that in. You can throw a swing in. I don't think it has the same impact as creating the snatch from the rack. Especially
I feel you can get a little lazy with the swing at the end. I feel where you can't get lazy with the snatch. You have to produce that power.
Yep.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. With what you going back to what you said, like when you learned about timeless and got that in, what was such the big impact of timeless? Was it kind of that intuitive approach now to it versus getting off the clock, that it changed the mindset? Was it a little bit more engaging when you were getting into the session?
It was really freeing myself from the clock. I was at the time I was training for Sinister, and I had, of course, would put together little charts of doing X number of reps per, minute, 45 seconds, taking the time down slowly and then changing a variable and taking the time down again, and, things of that nature. And surprisingly, didn't work as I tried to force myself through these imposed, time frames and changes in density. And then, Pavel started, I was reviewing the second edition, but as he was getting it together, and started really playing around with timeless, and just was amazed. Like the first time I did timeless 48 kilo swings, I think it took me 23 minutes, 23 or 24 minutes. And then by the next session, it was 21. By the next session, it was 19. And I'm like, that's really neat that I just accomplished a good bit more density. And my RPE was basically unchanged. My rating and perceived exertion was the same or better. And I'm like, I'm making progress and I'm not suffering. Like, this is okay. Let's see how far I can take this.
Yeah.
And so the timeless mindset, I now I enjoy being on the clock as well. Still, that's one of the things I love about kettlebell axe is, do my 4, 5 or 6 reps, whatever it is, and wait till the next minute, do a little bit of recovery, and then, back into the next set. So there's times where I don't want to be, I truly want to check out and just let the clock tell me what to do. Right. And then there's times where I want to feel my way through what I'm doing. And I want to have that awareness as I'm coming through.
Yeah.
So it having both in the mix turned out to be a good thing.
Yeah. It is. There's almost a weird honor code system to timeless as well, where it's like you have to really be aware of where is my RPE at the moment. And that's a term that as coaches and trainers, we put that out a lot of, like, you need to know your RPE. It is something that I think you need to learn if at a beginning stage, you have no idea what 8 out of 10 versus 6 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 feels like.
I'm still figuring it out.
Yeah, like, exactly.
It's one of those things that I'm a lot of years down the road of training and telling people to look at their RPE, and I'm like, there's days where I don't know that I'm doing a great job of knowing what my RPE is. And where as I've done more iron cardio over the last, X number of years that I've been doing it, the press is one thing where I started to really figure out, okay, my 32 is feeling like a 28. My 36 is feeling like a 32. That's an obvious change in RPE, right? That's something that's come from a 7 to a 5. Like you can start to that's almost where I feel like I have the best sense for my own RPE is within my press.
Yeah. Do you feel that right off the bat getting into training, like a readiness test at all? Or is it more like you feel that as you're getting in a few minutes into a protocol? Like, how does your intuition now work? Is there a readiness test that you do at all of, like, yeah, this bell feels like the best for the day?
So it's interesting because I will be filming a new product here in the next couple of weeks, and as I go through what I do to get ready for a session, I figure out real quick what the day is gonna give me. And so there's things in there like a get up plus where I do an arm bar and a bent arm bar. I do a windmill. So I have some single leg work in. I'll do a bottoms up press and a pry and goblet squat. I'll do a get up with the laddering up to the heaviest weight. And so if I'm going to do a 36 kilo iron cardio day, I'll do a 32 kilo get up, and then I'll do a 32 kilo iron cardio sequence.
Oh, okay.
Then I'll do my 36 kilo get up, and then I'll start into my iron cardio practice for the day. And so that as I go through those different weights and different movements, and especially, like, I know if I kick up my bottoms up press, and I do the same weight all the time, it's 24 kilo. It's not hard for me to bottoms up press, but there are days where I get it up in the bottoms up position. I'm like, ooh, that was not as easy as it should have been. And then there's days where I'm like, nearly throwing it through the ceiling, and I'm like, okay, this will be a good day.
Do you feel that going in? Like, do you feel like this is going to be a day that it's like it needs to be down, or is it more like as soon as you get into it, like
it's in the process?
It's
in the process of getting ready. I mean, there are days where I'm like, like I'm either really excited to train or I want to train because I've got a little bit of angst to get out of me. And then I'll get into the session and be like, man, this is not a day where I'm going to have my foot on the pedal. This is not going to be what I wanted it to be, but it's still, it's a good training day. Then there's days where I'm like, oh yeah, it's go time.
It is always, it's so funny still that there are those days that you wake up and like you feel like, all right, I'm ready to go. And then you get into it and there's just not that juice there. And then there's other ones on the flip side of that where you almost feel like you're dragging your feet into it. Then all of a sudden, 5 minutes in, and you just get that surge. And I've had clients and customers ask me that before. It's just like, what is that? I'm like, I don't know. Sometimes it's like there is some biofeedback stuff that you can probably get into. Antonio Scolante is a genius at this athlete readiness work, and I love talking to him about it. But sometimes just going in, I like what you said there of like just doing a get up with it, then just kind of go into a sequence, just kind of like get a feel for the lay of the land, for a minute, and you're probably going to get some results of what you're aiming for.
Absolutely. And then there's days where, you get into the actual session itself and the presses actually continue to get a quote easier, or you feel like your press is improving as you go through the session. And there's times where it doesn't improve as you go through the session and you're just kind of grinding it out a little bit. And I think part of that is just accept what the day gives you. Don't force. I know attaching meaning is a big kind of concept right now in self-care and mental health in particular. And in general, we do want to avoid attaching meaning to things. We don't want to miss meaning, though. In that drive to not attach meaning, we can't miss meaning. And I think that's, we may have talked about this before. That's kind of one of the brilliances of Be a Goldfish, because goldfish does have a 10-second memory.
Yeah.
So it's not that you don't want to review what happened and take a lesson from it. It's that you don't want that to be a cage that you live the rest of your life within.
Right.
Take the lesson, move on, do better. So I'm attaching, and from a training standpoint, it's that, no, today's going to be a great training day. Well, maybe.
Yeah, some days. Exactly. Yeah. Well, it's first off, it took us a while to get Ted Lasso into the podcast. So it's we finally got it in there.
That's it.
So yeah, exactly. No, I've been fascinated by this concept of standards versus expectations. I've written about this quite a bit, and Inky Johnson had a great quote about it of standards are internal, expectations are external. And I think oftentimes with training, we put expectations on ourselves of this is what this training day is supposed to be like. I'm supposed to get this many sets in on this day and and this is how it's supposed to feel. So if anything is off on that, you feel like it's almost less than. So it's like you're putting these expectations on, where standards is something different. Like, what is my effort going to be? What am I focused on? And those are a lot more first principle that you can get into. And I had this earlier today is, I'm on a Sinister journey again of getting back in with Timeless, and first time running through Timeless Sinister, had a good time, and then got sick, had a little respiratory issue, and then feels like it's getting back. Last week I did it. I didn't have the best time in there as well. So naturally in my head, I'm like, I'm going to beat that time this week. Like I'm putting an expectation on myself to make sure I'm getting into it. But then I was like, wait, like I can easily just force a better time in this, but that's not the point of what I'm doing with Timeless. It's to get my technique now, to really get into my body, to feel how my recovery is going, and then realize, and I actually beat it by like 20 seconds anyway from there. So thumbs up on progress. But it's like, it's going back from, I think with anybody listening, it's like, what are the standards that you have? It's like getting the technique and like, that's why I really like the work constraint versus time constraint part of Iron Cardio, of like, I'm just going to do this many sets. I'm going to make them the best sets, however long it takes, great. And just work it in there. That was a big eye-opening thing for me, of being able to go in, and naturally from there, my conditioning just improved from there. And it was actually a really enjoyable way to train at the same time, because there wasn't any expectations of I had to do this at this moment. And then skill development just goes, and so on and so forth.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, training in particular, and not to get too far down the mental rabbit hole of all of these different things, our physical selves are one of the few things that we have pretty good control over. There's things that are outside of our control from a physical standpoint. I didn't want cancer, but I had cancer. But outside of some things like that, like the physical self is one area. for both negative and positive things, we go to control, because it is within our control. Now, this can take a negative dive into body dysmorphia and eating disorder directions. It can go the direction of dealing with addiction and other mental health issues, where you grab a piece of control back in your life via the physical self, and you move in a positive direction. So those expectations and those things that we are establishing for ourselves or holding ourselves to, that's a double-edged sword. That can be a blessing and a curse. And so I think acknowledging that that's the case. You know, I've seen the memes like Thursday squat day, and you know, the kid has a baseball game. Well, that's what video recorders are for. Like, I'm not going to miss my, like, get over yourself. You know, I've got some stuff coming up later this week to where I probably will not train on Thursday and Friday. Probably could have snuck in another workout today. Didn't, because I just, quite frankly, didn't feel like it.
Come on, Cookie.
Exactly. See, exactly. That's the kind of thing that say this in the book, like if you're always giving yourself an out, you probably need to look at that. If you never give yourself an out, you definitely need to look at that, because now you're holding yourself to some unrealistic expectation, and you need to reevaluate your standards.
Well, that's why I think, I mean, going into the structure as well, I've talked about that with my work of, like, you know, discipline. It's like everybody preaches discipline, and I get it. Discipline is powerful and you need to have it, but discipline is not perfection. It's like you get to a point where, like, if you're disciplined and you're consistent with what you're doing, then good. To keep elevating to another level, you've got that down. Like, you need to look at other things, maybe moderation at that point, or giving a little bit of leeway, you know, on the leash is actually a really good idea. Like, I don't think it's bad to go into that, but I said, like, give yourself, like, if you go 6 months to a year and just work on this, that means that you're staying disciplined through all different seasons. You're staying consistent through times when you're feeling really good and motivated. You're feeling times when you're not motivated. You're going through of getting back after you're sick, or you have family obligations, all that different stuff. And when you actually, like, take a day or two off and then get back to it and realize, oh shit, I didn't lose anything from that. Sometimes that's a lesson that you need to have as well. But it's, you know, I think, you know, on the mental side of it, it is so powerful. Mindset is so vital and so important to have a strong mindset. But I think one of the best ways to do it is through the body. You know, John Danaher, the jiu-jitsu coach, talks about this all the time. He has guys do his visualization, but then immediately they go to the mat and take all that practice and bring it in, because I've said, like, if you're talking about overcoming challenges and I'm strong and I'm capable of everything, but if you're only doing it in a 72-degree room, sitting down on a pillow, like, that's a really comfy way to talk about overcoming obstacles. Like, flow that through the body at the same time. And it is a double-edged sword. And I think you can go down that route, but, you know, gratefully, I think the majority of the time it is a good thing to do. You need to be aware of this. That's why I think community and talking about these things all the time is so powerful, and you need that as well.
Definitely. And I think that, you know, having people that you can bounce stuff off of, you know, as a coach, I know my job is way more to put the guardrails in place, let the self-learning occur. And that's probably been the biggest change from an instruction standpoint, you know, versus, you know, I'll watch a student do, let's say we're checking their swing, whatever it is. I'll let them get the first 1 to 3 sets in before I really say, hey, we should probably work on this today. Because surprisingly, their first set might not be their best set of the day. They might be thinking, oh, coach is looking at me.
The first pancake always stinks. It's a throwaway.
The first waffle. I watch enough cooking shows now to where that analogy really makes sense to me. But yeah, I think that it is and people get concerned about doing it right from the start. Like, and that's goes back to the kind of the original iron cardio questions of, well, how am I not going to screw it up? Well, how are you going to screw it up?
Right.
Well, we may not know that until you get 30 sessions down the road, and we discover that, you know, actually 2 days a week of iron cardio is good for you. Like, otherwise it's a little too much pressing volume. There's a little too much things get involved. We're probably not going to know that until we do visit 3 sessions a week and find out it's a little too much. And that's okay.
Right. Yeah. And it might change, right? Like you might go from, but we've had that conversation of like going from high volume based programs to lower volume. And like I had that where I was doing high volume based program and just wasn't yielding the results, had to go to a low volume based work with a little higher intensity. And then all of a sudden you break through that change. But then I remember I talked with Fabio and he said, yeah, and sometimes it will just completely flip on its end after a little bit. And then you need to change again. It's an ever evolving cycle.
Yep. 100%. Yeah. It's, and I think that if you can embrace the journey, not the destination, that lifelong sort of process is where all the good stuff's going to happen.
Yeah, no doubt. So I have a couple of big picture questions that I wanted to ask you about as well. So, I mean, decades in this business, focusing on this modality of, training and strength and stuff like that. Is there anything that you used to think was super important that you realized over the years is not as important that a lot of people put emphasis on?
Oh boy. Yeah. And I'm going to say this and we'll probably catch some flack for it. Programming doesn't matter. Mm. It does. And it doesn't. You'll waste your life looking for the perfect program.
Okay.
And you'll miss a lot of opportunity to just put the work in and learn a lot about yourself and a lot about how you are at that moment and what you actually need to do for yourself. I come back to, if you remember the movie Blue Chips, Nick Nolte, Shaq, and
great movie.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Anthony Hardaway. Yeah.
Yeah. So, he's given the prep. They're getting ready to go out and play Indiana, which at the time, Bobby Knight, who just passed away, rest in peace.
Yep.
And they're getting ready to go out and play Indiana's big deal at that time. This is an older movie. And, he's telling the players, I will walk over to their locker room right now and hand them our playbook. I will give them our entire playbook right now because it doesn't matter. Because if we execute what we know we can do, they're not going to be able to stop us anyway. Mm-hmm. I look at training really in the same way now, that it doesn't matter what I do. If I execute and I pursue and I bring the kind of learning mindset with me, I can do any program and get results. Yeah. So yeah, that's probably one of the biggest things is, yeah.
You heard it here from Brett Jones said, throw out your program. So, no, I'm just playing.
Exactly.
So, it's funny with Blue Chips, Ray Lewis had a famous speech, I think, to Stanford football. And I got in a fight with a friend of mine because he said that same thing about like, they haven't seen you, like they've seen your film, but they haven't seen you because every day is a new day, and kind of said this whole thing. I was like, yeah, it's Nick Nolte. He just quoted Nick Nolte from Blue Chips.
Exactly.
It's like, no, exactly. It's like, no, that's Ray. I'm like, no, that's Nick Nolte. Yeah, from that, because great movie. Prime Shaq, prime Anthony Hardaway from there. So no, I love that message, that you said there, because I think we put so much emphasis on, I think, the program or whatever we're doing as the savior to what we want, because we have a goal that we have, and this is a great program because somebody got great results from it. And it's like, and I've been in this game too long, say just because neighbor Betty down the street got great results from it does not mean that you're going to get the same thing from there. But you see an anecdotal thing and you think, so then if it doesn't go that way, then something's off, something's wrong. Well, maybe it's just not the great plan for you, or maybe you didn't execute the best way that you could,
Well, and unfortunately, a lot of people internalize that.
Yeah.
They feel like they failed.
Yeah.
And people set themselves up, dietary wise, is one of the biggest ways people set themselves up for failure and feeling like they failed. They'll set themselves up on some unrealistic cabbage soup diet that they're going to stick to for 8 weeks. And I'm sorry, you're not going to eat cabbage soup for 8 weeks because it's awful. Now, I like cabbage, don't get me wrong, but cabbage soup diet for 8 weeks is not sustainable. But you set yourself up on whatever unrealistic dietary program. And then Thursday night, it's your kid's birthday party, and you end up having a piece of birthday cake.
Yeah.
And then you feel like, oh, well, God, I just failed. Well, I'll start again Monday. And then you're carrying that kind of failure mindset with you. And then it's easy to not do what you think you should be doing the next time. And well, I'm just a failure anyway. These, it's not the diet. I failed. Well, hang on. Like, let's take a breath. Like, it was your kid's birthday. I'd be disappointed. I was, heavily gluten-free and doing a bunch of things years ago. And we went to a colleague's house, and his daughter had spent the day preparing like this strawberry shortcake. And I got a plate of strawberry shortcake in front of me. Guess what I didn't do? I didn't sit there and go, hey, thanks for all of your effort and making all of this work and preparing this special dessert for us, but I'm gluten-free, so I can't eat this. I ate the freaking cake, and I complimented her, and it was awesome. And I complimented her on how great it was. And so, and look, if you legitimately have celiacs and you're gluten-free and that's unsafe for you, that's not who I'm talking to here. But self-imposed restrictions and things that we say, oh, I can't do this, I shouldn't do that. Well, and coming back to the moderation thing, well, even excess is okay in moderation.
Yes.
Because if everything's okay in moderation, excess is okay in moderation. And so I think we set ourselves up for self-fulfilling prophecies of failure by creating unrealistic situations and then not giving ourselves like it's okay to have that piece of cake. You're at your buddy's birthday party, or you're at a friend's house and they spent a bunch of time putting a meal together for you. Eat the freaking meal.
Exactly.
Relax and enjoy.
It is. It's I've been studying a lot about the concept of self-efficacy recently, with why people fail at things numerous times over and over again. And because I think it's not, we talk a lot, especially in the health and fitness and the nutrition industry, of, oh, people are lazy, like we have all this stuff. So I don't think people are lazy at all. Like, humans are incredibly resilient. We can do amazing things. We have a problem with longevity, with it, because oftentimes we do extreme things of getting in, and then it's the cabbage soup thing. It's not something sustainable, but we put these absolute markers on things, like the best way to do this, like all you need to do is these 3 key things and stuff like that. And it's a really sexy way to sell something from there. But, everybody knows that it's bullshit of going, even the people that are buying it, but oftentimes somebody's so desperate to make a change in their life that they get in. But one of the things that hit me is, I remember I had a client who was doing amazing stuff, but every time there was a compliment that came in for something, it was this, but I got a long way to go, or but it's like, oh, it's this waiting for the other shoe to drop, because they failed so many times over and over again from it. They're just waiting to go back to this old mindset. So it's a tough thing to get over, but it's something that we need to, as coaches, we need to talk about more and more, about those self-fulfilling prophecies of, inevitably we're going to go back to here. And I do think that the answer is this combination of structure and intuition. I don't know the exact ratio of it. I think it's an ever-evolving thing, but that's why we've had numerous conversations about iron cardio and this protocol, because I think it is one step closer into something for people to get that lifelong success.
Absolutely. And that self-talk and that, I've had, lots of students over the years and I had one student in particular that we were having a conversation, and they said, well, I haven't really trained in a year. And I'm like, whoa, I've been here that whole time. You've absolutely been training. I A, watched you online, and B, I see your workout journal. You absolutely trained probably 3 to 4 days a week for the last year. What do you mean you haven't trained? Like, that's something to unpack, like, right away. Don't let that comment settle in, because that, we're holding ourselves to some unrealistic standard of, well, I perceive the fact that I have not trained in a year because I didn't do X or I didn't accomplish Y. No, you trained a lot this past year. Like, I know that for a fact. Well, yeah. Okay, yeah, I get, you're right. I'm like, it's one of the rare instances, but I think this time I might actually have something something going here. So I think that, you know, we do get into that. And, you know, we've talked about this before, but, you know, like I have a big part of my identity in the early years of me teaching and everything was as the strong guy.
Yeah.
I was the 11th guy in the world to bend a red nail. I was decent. I had some decent powerlifting numbers, and I could move a pretty heavy bell pretty well. And so my good bit of my identity was wrapped up in being a strong guy. And then I went through some things that meant I wasn't the strong guy. And yeah, I think there's that aspect, and I still wish a lot of people would do this with themselves and just do a little word association. That you know, when I say fit, what's the first word that pops into your head? When I say strong, what is that thing that pops into your head? When I say six pack, what is, you know, hey, if it's a nice you know, Russian Imperial Stout, like you know, that can be a good six pack as well, but most people are thinking about the abdominals.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you kind of do a little word association and try to get to those unspoken self expectations, self language, because a lot of times the person you're saying, well, you know, you need to be fit. Well, fit is them getting bullied at a high school gym class.
True.
Fit is the, you know, the athlete that bullied them when they were in high school because they weren't that athletic of a kid, maybe a little bit of a more academic focused kid. So I think there's I know we've gone way down the mental rabbit hole side of things.
I love it. You know, I think it's so powerful. Those word associations are so strong.
Yeah, catch what's actually underneath there, because maybe the reason you do have to repeat the same thing over and over and feel like you're failing multiple times is the thing that you're trying to accomplish. There's a deep-seated negative reaction in your brain, in your soul, to this idea of fit, strong, six pack. And I wish the freaking world would just get away from emphasizing the low body fat percentage and the BS that puts itself out there as fitness. But yeah, I think that that's a understanding our expectations and expectations of others is one thing. Understanding the unspoken expectations that we have for ourselves and for others, that's where a lot of the gold is.
Yeah. I get it. You know, I've been down that route, especially with the body image. I was always the lean guy. You know, it's like the athletic, the quick guy. Strength was always kind of something I loved, but I never put myself in that category of it, just internally in your mind, because oftentimes I think you lean into your strengths that often get you accolades as well. You know, when
100%.
people see, I mean, because everybody likes when somebody sees something and admires you for something, like that's a powerful thing. It's that dopamine stack of getting in, and it's great to have, but in this world that we have, specifically with, you know, our social media culture where everything is on the surface, it can be very quickly to identify with that. So if anything's off from that, can be very tough on the mind. And then you're chasing this thing that you're trying to get to all the time. That's where, if there's any part where the intuitive approach to training really benefited me on an anecdotal side, that was it, because it took away from sometimes shutting down music, going out to the lake that's by my place and just playing for the day, just kind of getting into your body. And there's a deeper connection of realizing how powerful just movement and strength is when you apply it, not for an external goal that you're trying to achieve, but just really for like the grace of it, of getting in. And, you know, it's just having like the authentic just gratitude to move your body and to just train is so powerful. And if you're only following a structure-based plan of everything is always dialed in, I think you're missing a big piece of that. And to get that other side of it is, you know, as we just talked about a few minutes ago, I think one of those keys for ultimate long-term success where you can constantly evolve over and over.
Wouldn't it be great if the 80+% of the, speak specifically to the US population for the moment, if the 80% of the US population that doesn't exercise found joy in movement? and that we weren't doing it because we wanted a six pack. We weren't doing it because we needed to meet some societal expectation of how we looked. No, greater meaning to it than the joy of movement. There's a deep-seated part of me. Strength is something that has been a negative and a positive, but is still a deep-seated piece of who I am. And so for me, expressing myself physically is a huge part of keeping myself healthy mentally, keeping myself healthy physically. And it's just, I enjoy doing it. I'm not forcing myself to exercise. I'm exercising because I truly enjoy it. Boy, if that was the message and the idea that we can feel good. And I think that's the unspoken goal of almost everybody that enters an exercise program. They're going to come in and tell you it's weight loss. They're going to come in and tell you because the doctor told them to, because the spouse told them to, partner told them to, whatever the case may be. And, but I'd say 80% of the time they're coming in and say, I have a weight loss goal.
Mm-hmm.
I think the underlying goal there is I want to feel good.
Yeah. I want to be confident in who I
am.
Yeah.
I want to be confident. I want to feel good. I don't want to have these aches and owies. I want to feel that if my buddies want to go for a hike or go to a game, I feel like I can do that and really do well.
Yeah.
I think that's unspoken. I think we use age, we use failures in the past to say why I can't do that, or I'm just not going to be able to be successful at that, or whatever it is, and we just accept that I'm going to hurt. I'm going to if I start doing X, I'm going to get hurt again, so I'm just not going to do it because I know where that leads. There's such a better way to get there, and there's such joy to be had in movement and in expressing yourself physically and being strong. Socrates was a warrior and a philosopher, fought in many battles. We tend to think of philosophers as doddering older individuals who have wise things to say.
No, they're men and women of action. Yeah,
exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. And I love the word that you use there of joy, because I think joy and happy, I think get kind of thrown into the same, they're synonyms of each other, but I do think there's a different meaning behind it. I think happy is a little more on the surface where, if doing these word associations of what it means to be fit, what does it mean to be joyful? I think that's a really powerful one as well. And I think, let's end it on that. Brett, you're the best. This was, I think, my favorite conversation that we've had. I really loved diving into this, and I appreciate everything that you've done for me and everything you do for this community of strength. So thank you, brother.
Thank you, sir. Great to have the opportunity. Appreciate you.
Absolutely. So, the book's out there still, Iron Cardio. If people want to grab it, follow up with everything that you're doing, you got a lot going on. What's the best place that people can go and check you out if they don't already?
Instagram, brettjonessfg, appliedstrength.com.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. And I promise it will not be 100 episodes until we come back again. I'm sure we'll do it again, but thank you so much, brother. I appreciate it. Listeners, thank you so much. And I'll catch you on the next one. All right. Peace. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found some great value here. And if you like this episode, please drop a comment and leave us a 5-star rating and review. It does more to build the show than you can imagine. And do not forget to check out and join the Strength Connection Facebook group. In this group, I share the biggest takeaways and lessons from these amazing conversations, as well as training and strength tips for pursuing mastery and fulfillment in life. This group is filled with individuals looking to take full control over their strength, and it's the perfect space to explore new ideas and to share your journey. And you'll also get exclusive access to these Strength Connection Mastery Seminars. It's a deep dive into the physical, mental, and spiritual training that you can begin using immediately. So do not wait, go now. Seriously, go. All right, much love to you. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you on the next one.